Conchetta?
Hi, good morning.
Hi. And why am I seeing the back of my shelves instead of me?
I don't know. Darling,
Do you pronounce your name Conchetta or Concetta?
I go by either or. Whatever's going to be easier for you to pronounce.
Okay. Well, this is really
Try to
strange.
flip it. Can you flip the camera?
I'll have to go out to do that, but I will.
So, no. What I mean is on the screen. Do you have a Samsung or an iPhone?
I have a Samsung.
Try to go. Okay, so for iPhones, you there should be an option
Yeah,
for the camera.
There doesn't seem to be on this.
Because I see on mine, on the top of my screen right now,
Yeah.
I see a microphone, a camera, something that looks like a flip, and then I'm assuming what's going to be filters. Do you see any of that on the top of yours?
No.
Okay. Don't know what to do about that.
Well, to you and to Vlad, I may need another invitation because I have to go out and fix the camera.
Okay.
Okay.
There we go.
Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Okay, it looks like Janae may need a moment, but for the time being, we can chat. How we doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. We're doing good.
I'm good. So I was like looking up like where you guys were from, and you guys are from New Jersey?
Yeah.
That's so exciting. I'm originally from New York, so I'm like, we were neighbors.
Where in New York were you from?
Long Island.
I'm so sorry, it's still not working.
Oh.
I'm not quite sure what to do about this other than turn it around. Can you?
Yeah.
That works. Are you comfortable doing that?
Okay. Well.
Oh, now she's floating.
No. I feel so bad for her. For everyone tuning in, welcome to one of the return sessions of Pass-the-Baton Interviews. I am author Sam Guido. Today we have interviewer Janae Sacken, and she will be interviewing our authors Leslie Sommers and Janice Sommers. Ladies, say hello.
Hello.
Hi.
But yes, let's do some chatting for the time being. Are you Broadway aficionados?
Sort of.
Kinda.
I mean, I go more than she does.
I went more when I was younger.
Okay. Because I saw Six the musical on there and I got like super excited. I was just like,
Yes, I'm going to. I've seen it already, but I have a friend coming up to visit me from Louisiana, and she wanted to see it, and so we're going in 2 weeks to see it.
that is exciting. I'm excited for you guys. That was actually one of the ones I hadn't seen. Hello, welcome back.
Yeah, I finally found it. Hi.
Yay.
Thanks
Hi.
for holding down the fort, Conchetta.
I got you.
And I too want to welcome everybody. Conchetta and Otero and Leslie and Janice Sommers. And my name is Janae Sacken.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm moving around to get a little better lighting. There we go. Okay, are we ready to go, ladies?
Yeah, we're sorry that we're like half in the frame. We can't get any closer.
I don't know. It sounds like,
Sort of us like sitting on each other's laps.
yeah, I don't know what's going on here.
I actually think it is the perfect picture for the two of you. And we'll get into that in a minute. But first, by way of introduction, I would like to tell everybody who is new to Word Sleuth and Pass the Baton that we are a community of writers who are united by our passion for writing word improv. And that is, Word Improv is a writing challenge where we create a story using a set of new words that our mentor Vlad posts daily on Instagram, Word Sleuth. And we define a story broadly to include a tale, a poem, a short story, a skit, whatever kind of story you can think of. There's no character minimum or limit. And the other benefit is you learn new words and participate in word improv by following at Word Sleuth on Instagram. And today's conversation is part of a series of Pass-the-Baton interviews. We've sort of been off for the summer, where contributors to the Word Improv Challenge, we interview one another so that our community and audience learns about all of the huge variety of writers who are part of Word Improv, and we learn about their work. And before I introduce our featured guests, I'll just say a word about myself. My name is Shanae Sacken. I write suspenseful women's fiction, specifically the Annie Hawkins series about a seasoned photojournalist in Afghanistan who is dealing with PTSD and the Taliban. Conchetta, you run the gamut from all aspects of writing, I think. Could you tell us a word about yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Conchetta. I am the author of Secrets of the City of Gold. I did a retelling of the 2000 DreamWorks film, The Road to El Dorado. And I just had a lot of fun doing a lot of research on the Muisca, the Aztec, the Mayans, and the Incan cultures to kind of create my melting pot of El Dorado. The research aspect was so much fun. I can't wait to work on my second. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to pick that book back up again because I can't. I'm indecisive. I am so indecisive on where I want to go, which is so relative. Am I right, ladies?
Very much so.
Yeah.
I am so indecisive on where I want to go, but I've got so many plots ruminating, so I can't wait to get back into the crack of things. But yeah, I'm so excited to be returning here and being here with you ladies today. So this is going to be a wonderful Sunday morning interview.
Hooray! And now on to our featured guests. Leslie Summers, hold up your hand and wave, please.
Hi, everyone.
Holds a BA in English with a concentration in creative fiction writing from Montclair State University, my old stomping grounds in New Jersey. And like her protagonist, Bridget, also known as Breed, I think, sort of. They'll tell us all about this. Leslie was born and raised in New Jersey and inherited her love of reading from her mother, who is Janice Summers. And Janice holds a BS in education from Seton Hall University. Her passion for books was passed on to the next generation of her family. Both Leslie and Janice currently live in New Jersey, hooray, with their cat in a busy little town, and they couldn't think of a more perfect setting for their heroine. Breed Reborn is their first young adult novel, and their second novel in the Amulet series launches next month, which is very, very exciting. And
we're very excited.
A bit hectic too.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
Yeah. Before we get into the interview part, would you like to read the first part of the story that you wrote for Word Improv?
Sure. I'm up.
Okay.
Getting all the papers. Okay. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I saw him standing across the floor, red plastic cup in his hand, hedonistically dancing with his friends. The music blared from the speakers above us, his head nodding along to the thumping bass. A pretty black-haired Pi Beta Delta girl went up to him and started to grind against him. He politely took a step back, creating a space between them. She didn't notice right away, kept shaking her hips to the music. She turned to face him, only to discover he wasn't there. She pouted and shook her body away from his ghost, making it seem like it was her idea. His friends waved their hands in a suggestive manner, telling him he should go for it. One friend indicated there was a free room upstairs, but he just shook them off and headed towards the kitchen. I followed him, only getting close enough to watch him grab the tap and pour himself another beer. "Watch it," a deep voice said behind me. I stumbled out of the voice's way, silently chastising myself for being seen. Glancing away for almost only a moment, the boy had already left the room. Panicked, I looked around, only to find him back in the dance floor of the frat house, fist pumping to house music. I breathed a silent sigh of relief and slowly made my way back toward my spot. Some dancer bumped into me, pushing me into a crowd of people. "Are you okay?" someone asked as they grabbed my elbow. I whipped around to find myself face to face with the boy. My blood started to sing with anticipation and my nerves tensed. He was so close to me I could smell his cologne was tinged with sweat. Not a completely malodorous smell. I looked up and saw his pupils dilate. I was practically twitching with excitement. He would be my first.
You're stopping there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta stick around to hear what happens because
Yeah.
it's not what you're gonna think.
Yeah, really, you're not.
So,
You're so mean.
before we get into finding out about you two as writers, could you tell us a little bit about your first novel, Breed Reborn?
Sure. So it tells the story about a girl named Bridget who comes from Jersey. She is a descendant of the Scottish weather goddess Breed. Breed had a twin sister named Vera, and when they were children, if you will, right, because gods are ancient, they had a weather-controlling amulet that helped them control their powers along with the weather. We joke that this is our answer to global warming, for the record. Anyway, so unfortunately, this amulet goes missing, and Breed and Vera spend all of their time trying to find their pieces. That doesn't happen in their lifetime, but they each have families, and descendants in that family are now tasked with finding this amulet. So one of the great things about being a Kurahar or a seeker is that you end up with, or they end up with the powers of the weather or whatever power the goddess has. So Bridget is, in essence, a reincarnation of Breed. But the fun little twist that we have is that she falls in with Vera's seeker, and they do not. Their whole families do not get along. So it's a star-crossed lover's tale.
And it's wonderful. It is a page turner. And I know no one can see the cover, but please go to your bookstore or to Amazon and buy the book. But this is got to be one of the most beautiful covers ever. And
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And I see that there's a related brand cover for book 2, which is, they're really works of art. They're just gorgeous.
Oh yeah, we can't. They're like the cover of our phones. They're our background screen. We have them on mugs. We're just obsessed.
Yeah.
We love the covers ourselves.
Yeah, they're really, really beautiful. So I'm fascinated that the two of you write together as a team, because everybody thinks of writing as such a solitary activity. So could you tell us how you two decided to write together?
That was my choice.
Yeah, it wasn't a group decision.
Basically, I was working on the book first, and I kept running to my mom and like pitching ideas off of her, or kind of talking at plot points. And I think about halfway through, I said to you, "This is so silly. You basically wrote this book with me. Why don't you just actually write the book with me?" So she was like, "Okay." So her name went on the book, and that's the kind of pattern that we still continue to do. We will we'll discuss plot points. I will do the physical writing of it, and then she'll read it, and then we'll rediscuss if the plot point works or if it doesn't work. Or sometimes I'll write and I'll be like, so our character didn't want to do that. It didn't feel natural to her or him, and they said no. And she'd be like, okay. And then she'd go back and be like, okay, I see what you're saying.
What if you disagree?
Oh, yeah, there's a different point of view. I'm her mom, so I'm looking at the character in a different way than she is. So yeah, discussions come up, and she'll remind me I'm not 15 years old, and the character is 17, and so she'll I don't know what's the word. You send me on the right path, or
I
you
just remind you you're not 15 anymore, and that's not what a 15-year-old would do. And I actually have teenagers in my life I can fact check with if that's what a teenager would still do.
So I'll let her go with it, because I have to work with where I'm coming from, and this book is not meant for me.
But at the same time, there is a mom character, and the relationship between Bridget and her mom is very similar to the one that we have.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times where I'll write something that I would perceive as a child, what my mom would say to me, and my mom would be like, no, that's not the intention. And she would come back and correct how the mom's true feelings would be and why they would act a certain way. So, I don't want her to discount things. Just because she's not 15, she can't write from the point of view of the teenager. She does have an input on characters.
I can relate to the older people in the book and make it a little easier that way, because she's not there yet.
No, I'm not 70 yet.
Well, as a fellow writer, that is very, very helpful to have that span of points of view and experiences. So, why YA fantasy? And may I just say before you answer that, I think it was a stroke of genius to have this amulet control the weather and to bring in such a globally, politically, and socially important issue as global warming in this way. It makes for such a powerful read.
Well, thank you for that.
I don't know if that was our intent.
It was. Very quietly. It was not meant to be like a bash you over the head kind of thing. But it is meant to draw an eye to that situation, that really scary issue that we're facing. But we went with YA fantasy specifically because that was where my sweet spot was. Growing up, I read everything, but I stopped at YA fantasy. It took me forever to, honestly, it probably took me until I was 2020 to read adult fiction books. I very much only stuck with YA fantasy and YA dystopian and YA romance and all that stuff. I don't know why, but it's what resonated with me as a reader, and it just felt natural to write a novel that would, be part of the genre that I'm so attached to.
Okay. And Janice, do you feel the same way? Do you read YA fantasy or any YA?
I have to truthfully, probably not since I, had children. But I read more now to get the cadence, the idea, that kind of thing of what's going on. But in the past, no, I was reading adult novels. I was really into horror and suspense and mystery and that kind of thing. So
Stephen King fan.
Yeah.
So who were some of your favorite authors?
Oh gosh, Andrew Greeley, Stephen King,
Crichton.
Yeah, Crichton.
Okay.
Trying to think of.
I,
And Leslie, who were you reading
Currently or always?
in the past that sort of got you into writing this book?
One of there was one series in particular that's a huge influence on my personal feelings towards this any kind of writing. It's the Witches of Lennon series by Kate Forsyth. I read them when I was in high school, and I still reread them to this day. They're so powerful.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with him, but I am familiar with rereading. I have a set of books that I just love to reread. And Concetta, I see you nodding your head. What do you like to read and reread?
So I have actually just finished rereading not too long ago The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern.
Yeah.
I love the storytelling aspect. I loved how slow it was, how slow paced it was, but at the same time she kept you hooked. She kept you intrigued with what was going to happen next. Granted, it was more character driven, where usually I'm more plot driven, in whatever I'm reading. But my current read right now, which was again another slow read, I got this thing with authors with slow reads. I love Madeline Miller. I read The Song of Achilles not too long ago, and I'm actually working on Circe right now. Beautifully, beautifully written, beautiful story told, and it gets you intrigued to reread the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Yeah, they really do. Okay. Do you guys have a Scottish connection or a particular interest in Scottish Celtic legend? Why
it wasn't,
and this story?
Yeah, it wasn't me because both sides of my family are from Sicily, so my husband brought that tiny little Scottish, bit into our lives.
So when I was originally creating this storyline, it actually was inspired by my dad. He heard something. He was also partially deaf, so he misheard something. His reaction was really angry. I was washing the dishes, and I was looking out the window, and as it was sunny out, and as he got angrier and angrier, this cloud cover moved over, and it got really dark outside, like it was about to storm. And then I think my mom explained what she was saying or what he had heard, and he actually heard it correctly and realized it wasn't meant to be an angry response, and started to calm down. And as he calmed down, the cloud moved away. And I thought that was just, and I literally was just, no, I know he doesn't control the weather, but what if he
did?
What if? So I sat down and I wrote the prologue, and I wrote the first 2 chapters, but I didn't want it to be Greek mythology. I wanted it to be a little bit off the beaten path, because at that time, Percy Jackson was a huge thing. People were still reading the Iliad and the Odyssey, and there was another movie coming out with it. And I just felt Greek particularly was feeling very oversaturated in the market. I was also working at Barnes & Noble, and I was working in the kids department. So I was very in tune with what YA books that were coming out and what topics they were. So I wanted something that was going to relate, but it wasn't going to be just spot on. And Egyptology, again, was something big that Rick Riordan was working with. And I was like, I kind of want to stay away from that. And I studied some of that when I was in college, but it just didn't resonate with me. And then I finally kind of made my way over to the Celtics. And I thought it was interesting. And then I literally typed in weather, goddess or god with weather controlling powers, Scottish mythology or Irish mythology or something. And it popped up Breed and Vera. But actually it popped up, they call her the old hag. I think she's called Pilot. It's a very hard word for me to pronounce because it's in Gaelic, and I don't speak that. But she essentially is an old hag where in the summer she's very beautiful. She's this lovely young woman, and then in the winter she turns older and she actually turns to stone, and she's stone for the 6 months that we're all in winter. And I loved that idea so much, and I actually separated the characters out, and I started kind of playing with the myths that way. And over the course of all of our research for it, we found out that there wasn't a lot of separated Scottish mythology. It was it was really intertwined with Druid and Irish mythology. So we had a little bit more freedom to play with what we wanted with because a lot of that stuff was lost to history.
Have you been to Scotland?
Yes.
She has. I have not.
Where did you go?
Edinburgh, I went to the Isle of Skye, I went to Inverness. Yeah. I went to the fairy pools and the fairy ring, and yeah, I think that's like really all I went to in Scotland.
And did that
Change it.
inspire you even more with
No.
the Amulet series?
No, that was after.
Part
Okay.
of the book takes place in that area. So she went sort of on a
Like a week.
vacation research kind of thing,
Yeah.
so she could get some idea to get a better understanding of what's going on.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm counting on this book, Going to Scotland. I'm
Third
looking
book.
forward to
You
that.
gotta wait a little
A
longer.
little longer.
There is travel in the second book. She does leave the U.S. and she ends up in Switzerland. So she does travel internationally. Just the third book has a little bit more international travel, and she does land in Scotland.
Good. Excellent.
It's not a spoiler.
How to keep me hooked. Okay. So how would you describe your writing style?
We're plotters, not pantsers, but we do have a little bit of pantsers in us. Do you know what I'm referencing when I say these things?
Oh, absolutely.
Not everybody does,
um,
so I have to check.
I didn't know. So
why don't you define it then? And after you define it, could you talk about how you plot it?
Sure. A plotter is somebody who will plot out what happens in the book and knows where they're going, what's going to happen, all the little details that we all need to know for what have to happen. And a pantser kind of just sits down and writes, and it's chaotic. And it's just whatever they're feeling, they follow what the character wants. There's no set outline of what they need to follow as an author.
But you said you have a little bit of pantser
Yeah.
in you.
So we'll plot out big points that we have to write to. We'll say, okay, so in the first book, we need to make sure Bridget meets Trip. We need to make sure that she finds out information. She needs to make sure she learns who these people are in relation to her and like what her powers are and so on and so forth. But the intermingling on how we get to those plot points is a little bit chaotic because I will get an idea or we'll discuss the plot point of how we want it written to that particular scene or that massive plot device or whatever it is. And I will start to write it, but then it will be like, this didn't feel right. She doesn't feel like, knowing how I feel about this character and knowing what this character is feeling in the moment, it doesn't feel like she would be this, lovey-dovey towards him or this angry towards him or whatever it is. So it would be kind of like, I change it up in the moment. And that to me is what I felt is a little chaotic.
So is that also your characters speaking to you? Do they speak to you?
I think sometimes, it's the kind of thing like she's written something and I'd say, well, what would be another character's answer to that? In the second book, there's a scene and she wrote it and I had said something. It's like, that's not going to happen. That's not something she would say. You have to change that because it's just not going to happen. And it worked better. But knowing the person, the character, I could a little bit gauge what she was feeling and changing it.
Yeah, my character speaks to me.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the things that I absolutely love about this book is that, yes, it's fantasy, but it's like a slow into the fantasy world. It's completely grounded in teenage reality.
Oh, yeah.
And Bridget is slowly awakening and to this other world and this other life. And it is so just impeccably spot on, completely nailed it. It's a wonderful book.
Thank you.
You.
So Is this your first book, or have you written anything before this?
Not together.
Yeah, not together, separately. I've always written short stories, little things, little quips, on business, birthday cards, you write a little something. I've written little poems for her, my son, that kind of thing. Nothing that, would shake the world up, So it's just, it's more of a personal thing for them, but she's been writing for quite a while. Well, no, it was more like when you get those spelling words and you have to write the sentence for each word. She said, She came to me and she said, I'm so tired of writing, sentence, 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 sentence. I said, so write a story with those words in it. And she did.
It was like the gateway.
And that started the whole thing. She wrote a story about, something with a little girl in a factory that exploded with chocolate or something. And we had her bring chocolate in when she read it. So,
So you're saying you were doing Word Improv when you were 6 years old?
No. Yeah.
First or second grade, I don't remember.
I was like 6, 7, but yeah. I started to read at 3 years old.
Yeah.
And by the time I was in first grade, I was reading on a 5th grade level. I always loved to read, and so it just made sense. It was sort of like when my mom was just like, "Oh, write this." It was like, "Oh, yeah, I could do that." Like, why didn't it occur to me? What do I know? I'm 5, but I was doing that, and that's kind of, truthfully though, like that's kind of Word Improv is sort of like how we all write to begin with, right? Like you're choosing random words to fit in. You might be doing it as you're going through the book itself, but I mean, maybe reviewing it, editing it, or you're writing it, and you're like, that's not the right word. What word am I looking for? And you go to a thesaurus or a dictionary, and you're like checking out the definition and seeing what other synonyms are. So I feel like a lot of actual writing is almost improvisational at the same time.
Okay. Now I know book 2 is coming out in a few weeks, and you've hinted at book 3. Can you give us a clue about what happens in book 2? Or is that too much of a spoiler?
No. Well, she does develop, she grows as a character, she grows as a person, for sure. That is definitely charted because we didn't want her to stay 17 and have that, immature in a way, kind of like that 17-year-old, the innocent 17-year-old attitude. She's supposed to be taking on this world-saving adventure. She can't be ignorant as much as she is in the first book, as you read. So there's more awareness that comes about, and there's a lot more fighting scenes.
Well, she grows.
There's a relationship.
She has to grow to take on this role as a seeker. So she has to grow. She has to be more aware of the other side. She has to be aware of what she can do. She has to embrace it. And that's a thing where, how do we make her become cognizant of the fact that she's got these powers and she can use them for good or bad, whatever. But she has to embrace the role that she's been assigned to, if you will.
But we can say that they're, like I said, new relationships, a little bit more adult. There are it's a little darker. It's still going to have a light-heartedness to it, like the first book does, because Bridget is not that person. She is meant to be a lighter character. We wrote her this way because we are aware of how people these days are dealing with a lot of generational trauma, and they're dealing with a lot of trauma in the world, especially after, first of all, let's just be honest, going through puberty is pretty traumatic in itself, and then dealing with the outside stuff of high school and even 2020 and just the world, it's a lot. So we wanted something that was going to be a little bit of escapism with somebody who is not going to constantly remind you that the world outside is a little depressing in that regard. So she doesn't lose that in book 2, which is something we wanted to keep. But it does, as a book, get a little darker. You know, there are deaths involved, there's some shocking twists at the end, and if you thought the cliffhanger in book 1 was really good, hold on to your hat. Book 2 is bigger.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost unfair that it's categorized as YA because I think this is also an adult read.
We've noticed that there were a lot of adults who read the book, family members, friends, that kind of thing. Yeah, people at cons. That they were entranced with the book. They were, you know, reminiscing or reminding them of their own teenage years and how they developed and that kind of thing. So it was an interesting concept that I didn't think adults would read this at all, tell you the truth.
I did. But I also worked at a bookstore, and I worked in the kids department, and I would see people come in. And I remember there was a customer who wanted new books, and he just didn't know. And I was like, well, I work in the kids department. I can give you some really great YA recommendations. And he ended up reading, I mean, young adult, young readers. He was reading, I was trying not to make sure it was like a picture book, right? But he was taking my advice, and then he was also buying books for one of the children in his life. I think it was like a friend's child or his nephew. I'm not quite, or his grandson. I don't remember. So I already expected that adults would read the book. I just didn't expect that many to read it.
We were a little surprised.
Really surprised. I mean, no shame. We love it because I'm an adult YA reader, but we definitely thought that there'd be a lot more teens.
So, if you could sit down with 3 authors and the 2 of you, who would those 3 authors be? And you may have different answers. So, who would they be and why? And what would you talk about?
This is a funny question.
We thought about this. I can't come up with 3 people off of the top of my head.
We did have one collective idea. Neil Gaiman. We would sit and talk to him because he co-wrote the Good Omens series with Terry Pratchett, and we would like to get his perspective to writing in a partnership from somebody who is not familial.
Yeah.
we would do that also probably with Christine Lauren or Lauren Christine. I cannot remember, but they are romance authors and they co-write a series together. A bunch of series, like Josh and Hazel is one of them. The Unhoneymooners, I think, is another book of theirs. I don't read all of their books, I have to admit, but I'd just be fascinated to hear what they say. But in general, we are part of the community. We do talk to other authors a lot of the time. So it was, when we got this question, we definitely laughed because we were like, we text a lot of people anyway.
Yeah, it's like,
who would we talk to? But truthfully, I talked to Danielle Arcino and Kate Disney Lugers and Chelsea Rice, or C.R. Rice, she goes by professionally, and Brandon Hoy and J.V. Hillard. And I just talked to we talk to these people pretty consistently. And on any given time, we all can reach out to each other and say, like, hey, I'm struggling on this point. Kate and I have been doing this to each other recently, actually, because she's working on her 4th book now. And I'll randomly text her something, or she'll randomly text me, and the other one will be like, oh my gosh, thank you, that is what I need. That is what I needed to continue writing, or that was what I needed to get over this hump, or whatever it is. So, we already are having those conversations with the 3 authors, but professionally, in a very public, famous kind of sense, those are the people we'd stick with, Neil Gaiman and Christine Lauren.
Okay, cool. Concetta, do you have any questions for Janice and Leslie before we have them move on and read the rest of their story?
No questions, but I did have a comment. I did want to say that I love the fact that it's a mother-daughter duo writing this book together, because you guys are always going to have this. And it's a beautiful and it's a beautiful way to connect with one another in that regard. So like when I found that out, I was just like, oh my God, that's a beautiful thing. Like, I love this for them. And you can always.
It's also unusual.
I'm sorry?
always unusual too.
It is, and you never hear that. You never hear that. So like for me, that was just like, oh my God, that's incredible. And like you guys can like learn so much from one another and just get those perspectives and just bounce those ideas off of one another from two different generations. So I think that's just, again, I can't say it enough. That's just a beautiful thing. And yeah, I hope, you know what? I definitely want to read this book now. I definitely want to read and see. No, seriously. I'm always looking to expand my list, and especially from indie authors and local authors and things of that regard. So no, congratulations, guys. And congratulations on the next book.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There was one other famous mother-daughter writing team from Saddle River, New Jersey, Mary Higgins Clark, the mystery writer.
Oh,
and
I know that.
she wrote most of her books by herself, but then started team writing with her daughter.
Jody did too.
Jody,
She wrote a book with her daughter.
Yeah. So, I don't know who is up to read. Is this going to be Leslie?
Yes. You'll find out why it's her first time.
Yeah.
I wasn't supposed to kill him.
Oh.
My handler told me this was an observation mission, gathering further intel on the target. You must have been bumped pretty hard, he said to me, still holding onto my arm. I smiled politely and shook my head. Fine, thanks. I'm Mark, he said. Alice, I replied, supplying him with my cover. My heart thumped loudly in my chest as I gathered my medal. You have a really nice smile, he yelled over the music. Don't engage. My handler's voice echoed in my head. Watch, study, but do not engage. But my handler wasn't here, and I was on my own. Do you want to go somewhere to talk? I asked. He grinned and placed his cup down on the bookcase next to him. I know just the spot, he said, sliding his hand into mine. I followed him furiously, noting all the available exits, just in case I needed a quick getaway. Mark took me upstairs. For a brief moment, I worried that someone would have seen us, but I remembered that I wasn't supposed to kill him here. No one would think any differently than other this being just a drunken college hookup. This is much better, Mark said, leading me into a quiet room. He flicked the light on, and my eyes adjusted to the brightness. The room wasn't anything impressive. A desk, an unmade bed, some baseball posters hanging on his wall, clothes scattered around the room. I saw a sock peeping out from under the bed. Much nicer, I agreed. Internally, I was anxious to kill him and be done with it. Feigning interest in his signed baseball in his dresser, I moved away from the door, noting my position to the window. It was open, so with a quick kick through the screen, I'd be out of here. Suddenly, I felt heat radiating behind me. I turned around and found myself facing Mark. I'm not the shortest person to ever live, but Mark was a good head taller than me, forcing me to look up. Would you like something to drink? There's no alcohol here, I pointed out. He smiled. I have my private stash. Mark leaned down and kissed me hard on the mouth. He was definitely trying too hard, and his technique felt a little desperate. I gently pushed him off and smiled, not trying to encourage any populating before I was ready. A drink sounds really good, I said. A smirk flickered across his face, and he moved to grab a drink from a small fridge. Beer, he offered? What an unctuous host. I nodded, and he popped 2 cans open and poured them into mugs he had on his dresser. I took one from him and pretended to drink. If one of us was going to survive tonight, I'd need all my faculties about me. Mark had a long drink from his beer and took my hand. You know, I saw you checking me out in the kitchen. We sat on the bed with my back to the window. You did? Damn, I was trying to hide it, I said, falsely sheepish. I scooted back until my tailbone hit his headboard. He inched closer to me and looked me up and down. You look good tonight, he said, his voice low and throaty. I suddenly was very thankful for wearing jeans. Thanks. He took the untouched drink from my hand and placed it on the cluttered nightstand. Not thirsty, he asked, noticing the mug. Not for beer, for blood. Mark smiled and nodded, leaning closer to me. I allowed him to kiss me, not truly enjoying the moment, though I'm sure any of the girls downstairs would switch with me in a heartbeat. Mark was, by definition, hot. A top docket duke, strictly C's and B's, with, I can't say this word, I'm sorry. He basically had good looks. That was one of the improv words, and I I really can't say that word. He had warm green eyes, sandy-colored hair, and wasn't too meaty, but more of a strong build without the extra muscle. If he could sing, every teenager, male, female, and in between, would be throwing their panties at him. He slid his hand up my waist, giving it a small squeeze before moving towards my chest. Wait, I said, stopping his hand. I unintentionally flushed and hated myself at that moment. I need to be in better control. Is this your first time? Mark asked, somewhat excitedly. I allowed my flush to hide what I was really feeling. Something like that. I opened my eyes wide and blinked, hoping to convey innocence and not to look like I was crazy. Don't worry. I'll be gentle. He gave another kiss, softer like promised. They say a girl never forgets her first time. I smiled sweetly and reached over for my mug. I took a large sip, hoping to wash the taste of bile from the back of my throat. This was getting out of hand. I don't want to go first, I said, swinging my legs underneath me. Turn around. Mark grinned widely, stupidly excited for what was coming. He turned his back to me, and I began kissing his neck, wondering how much DNA would be left on his skin. He moaned ever so slightly, and I couldn't stand it anymore. Feels good? I asked as I pulled out the blade I kept tucked in my boot. You know it does. Keep going, he said. I wrapped one hand around his chest and whispered, close your eyes, into his ear. I kissed him exactly 5 more times before I pressed the warm metal to his throat. You're right. I won't forget this, I said as I sliced the blade, as the blade cut into his skin. That's it.
Wow. And did you two write this together?
No. No, I just,
That is my rating.
that's her. That's all her.
It's very unedited. It's a little messy, but yeah, that's a story. When you asked earlier if there were pieces of things that we were working on prior to writing the series, and we said not together, that was something I was working on prior to not being with my mom.
Yeah.
I hear elements of The Harbor and Stephen King coming into this piece, as well as the YA part. So it really is a wonderful blend of the two of you, even though, Leslie, you were the sole writer on this piece.
Yeah, you can see my mom's influence on me.
Absolutely.
Whispering in her ear.
Okay, are you two planning any more joint writing or separate writing beyond the Amulet series?
We have another book that I kind of pitched to her. Another series.
Ooh.
So we're going to finish the 3rd book, and then we'll think about how this other book is going to go. I think we spoke. It's going to be a little bit darker from the get-go.
It'll probably be less YA and a little bit more new adult.
Yeah.
Depending on how the execution of the book goes.
Yeah, how we feel. But we wrote some little plot lines, a little this, a little that, just to, keep it fresh. When we go back, we'll know what we're thinking and about.
We also had to stop because we were getting too involved, and we had to
Finish the other
series first. So as soon as we finish book 3 and that's edited and submitted to the publisher, we'll jump into this other series. It will not be connected to the Amulet series.
So will the Amulet series be complete at book 3?
That is the plan. There may be a novella that's coming out in between there. That's not something we've officially settled on, but that's been toyed with. But otherwise, it is meant to be a trilogy.
I'm fascinated because I wrote a trilogy as well, and I'm fascinated with that so many series are trilogies right now. It seems to be the in thing.
I just felt like I did not know. I planned it as a trilogy before I invited Mom to join, and I literally thought to myself, I came from being a short story writer, so in my head it was like, I don't know if I can keep it going past 3. So that's why this one stops at 3. We made sure it would wrap up in 3.
Well, I'm going to wrap up this conversation now. And Janice and Leslie, I want to thank you so much. Concetta, thank you so much for being here. And I'd like to ask each of you where people can follow you on social media. Concetta, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Janae. First off, I would like to say you did such a wonderful job, Janae. Thank you so much, for being a part of this today. But you can find me on Instagram at thewordywoman20. I'm kind of like rebranding myself, so that's kind of like the focal point of where you can find me for the time being. But thank you.
Okay. Janice and Leslie, where can we follow you?
You can follow me. I run all of our socials. So it's the same Instagram handle that I have, LJ_Summers. You can follow us on X, TikTok, Threads, Instagram by that, and on Facebook, it's just me, Leslie Summers.
Okay. And I can be followed on Facebook at Shanae Sacken, Instagram at Shanae Sacken Author, and on my website at shanaesacken.com. Our next Pass the Baton will be on Sunday, October 8th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I am now passing the baton to Leslie and Janice, who will take over the interviewing seat. And they will be talking with YA fantasy author C.R. Rice, also known as Chelsea Rice. And I know you have a personal connection with her.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a fantastic conversation.
She's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I also want to invite everybody out there to join the fun of learning new words and trying your hand at Word Improv by following at Word Sleuth on Instagram. If you'd like to get involved in the Pass the Baton interviews, you're welcome to DM at Word Sleuth. That's WORDSLEUTH. And that's about it. Any final comments, ladies?
I have one. If you are an aspiring author and you don't know where you want to start, feel free to reach out to any author you follow. We're a very welcoming community, and more than likely and very much would like to support budding authors out there. I mean, other people that we've talked to about book stuff, like there's a friend of mine who I met through Bookstagram who then became an author after we were friends, Maggie Paredes. She's actually on here. And hi, Maggie. But she and we still talk to each other all the time, and we rely on each other for stuff, and she started after me. So we've developed a great friendship because of this community. So I always want to tell anybody, if you want to write and you don't know where to start, ask. We're more than willing to help.
Yeah, I'd like to second that, because authors are regular people and we all want to pass it forward. And so we welcome any person who thinks they want to write but isn't sure how to do it, or anyone who likes to write. We love to talk and we love to mentor, and talk to us. Thank you for that. Janice, do you have anything?
No, I think she covered it. I mean, she talks more to the authors than I do, because the age difference. Sometimes, I come off as mom all the time, and I don't want to. So she'll talk to them more, but she'll let me know, or they'll ask questions through her to me, and I will answer, that way. But when we're together, I interact with all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of mother all of them. It's terrible.
Known as Nona Janice.
Yeah, they call on the circuit. They call me Nona Janice.
I think that's great. Concetta, a final word?
Oh, yes. Thank you. To any aspiring author out there, I know fear is a big setback as to why, like, oh my God, I'm so afraid. What if they don't like it? What if the first draft's not good? First off, let me just get this out here right now. Your first draft's supposed to look like an IKEA project. It's supposed to look like a hot mess. Yes, can we give it up for that? Yes, hot mess first drafts. Yeah, don't be afraid. Reach out to your authors. I'm going to third everything that these wonderful women have been putting out there today. Definitely reach out to authors. It's not an intimidating thing. We are people. We love to chat. We love to talk. We love to bounce ideas. So yeah, if you've got a dream, don't let fear hold you back from that. Just push through it. Push through the imposter syndrome. Don't let it hold you back.
Yes, and silence that inner critic. Just, I love that the first draft is supposed to be an IKEA project, a hot mess. That's absolutely true.
Oh, it's awful.
Literally, when we got our editor, we gave her our first draft, and my comment back to her after the original editing, the first round of edits, I said, thank you for letting me fall in love with my book again. Because I hated my first draft so much, but I knew it had to be written. You can't edit a blank page.
Exactly.
No, you can't.
Exactly. And I actually, I love edits. I love working with my editor, and that's where I feel that the book really comes to life.
Yes.
So thank you, editors out there, and writing coaches. And thanks to all of you for tuning in this morning. I've really enjoyed my conversation with all three of you, and on to October 8th.
Yes, see you then.
Marching forward.
Bye for today. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, guys.